Welcome to The Independent Musician. Our weekly podcast will focus on the independent artist and the music market at large. You'll hear from those artists as well as music execs, tech experts, and marketing leaders from around the globe. We'll discuss what it takes to make it in the biz and how you can overcome obstacles as you progress your craft, all the while making it interesting and fun. Now, here's your host, Mark Skoda.
Well, welcome. This is Mark Skoda with The Independent Musician, and we've got a great show for you today. We've got a wonderful TikToker who shares the stories of rock and roll throughout history. Patrick Hicks is a TikToker from Chicago, Illinois. And Patrick, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks so much for having me.
You know, I shared with you just before we got started, I've been following you for quite some time now and really enjoy what you do as an informative TikToker. You and I don't have the midriffs ready anymore to dance to, but you have one hell of a job with your storytelling. I really appreciate that. Tell us a little about your background before you sort of got into TikTok.
Sure. I just got started doing TikTok in 2022. So, just doing a lot of other stuff before I ever got to TikTok. As far as like my storytelling background, my parents are both journalists. My dad was a court reporter for a long time. Like he covered criminal trials in Orange County, and then he had his own column for a while. So, definitely was a storyteller growing up. My mom also worked for the LA Times. So that part has been kind of like in my blood. And then I just my whole life grew up reading music biographies. I was always really into music. My parents would get me books from the library all the time. I kind of on my channel, I do like, every different genre and, every decade of music. And I think that really comes from, like my parents did not know what kind of music I liked really.
Right,
like they didn't know what was cool. So they just would get me any biography. They would just be like, oh, here's a music book. Patrick likes music. And then I find myself reading, like Madonna's biography and then Depeche Mode's biography and B.B. King and I just like loved all of them. I just like soaked it all up. And then of course I, was raised with MTV and VH1, Behind the Music, all that kind of stuff. And I was just obsessed with music as a kid. And I played in bands and I, played the guitar. And I worked, sort of in the music business. I worked as a booking agent at some places in LA. Didn't really like know what I wanted to do exactly. I went to a school called Musicians Institute in Hollywood. Mm-hmm. I did the music business program there, and when I was there, I had a professor or a teacher who was a lawyer, and he was a contract lawyer, and I had no idea that was a thing. I thought lawyers were like trial lawyers. I thought of Tom Cruise in A Few Good Men. He was the first person I ever saw. He was like, "Yeah, I just read complicated documents and explain it to people that don't understand it." And I was like, "Oh, I could do that." So then I just kind of took a 180 with my life. I went to law school. Yeah, so I went to law school here in Illinois at the University of Illinois, and then married a Chicago girl and have Chicago kids. So now I'm Midwest based, but it was totally out of anything to do with music, but just had it as a hobby. Just was always obsessed with learning about music,
right?
And then fell into TikTok.
That's interesting because obviously, you've sort of had a circuitous route to the storytelling that you're doing, and it's interesting. Of course, you're a voracious reader, as am I. Actually, I think it's fun to look behind sort of all the stories and figure out who and did what and when and how. And I think you have a very your storytelling ability. And for those of you, check Patrick on TikTok. Certainly Patrick Hicks. It's a great TikTok channel. I think we even talked about getting some of your stuff over to YouTube just in case the government decides to quash TikTok here in America. But I think what's kind of cool about what you do is you've got this very sort of cool style, sort of I call it Paul Harvey, right? The rest of the story. If you ever remember who he was. And I think that's kind of fun to watch and I enjoy, it's surprising. You're just looking in the camera, telling me about these bands and these musicians and these stories, which harken back really to the old days of, sort of storytelling generally, where you sat with your grandfather or your father and you listened intently to a person who was describing what was going on around you. And so I think you've done a great job of doing that. And clearly, obviously, you've been seeing good success over at TikTok.
Thanks. Yeah. I mean, that's the vibe. I get comments every once in a while that are like, why are you so close to the camera? Like, pull your face back. But, the vibe is supposed to be like, hey, I'm just your friend telling you a story. Well, like, I just record it into my phone. I don't have any fancy equipment. Like, I do edit, photos and video clips in, but, it's supposed to just be like, this is your friend telling you about a cool story that they know. And so,
Exactly.
like, most people respond to that pretty well.
I think so, and I think it's obviously interesting way to approach this in this sort of overstimulated environment we now live. So tell me a bit. So how do you determine sort of what stories you tell? Because obviously there's an enormous amount of information out there, and obviously you're doing research, et cetera. But what drives you towards a particular interest, or how do you decide what you're going to talk about on a particular TikTok presentation?
Yeah, it's pretty random. It's just kind of like what my gut feeling is, like maybe what I've been listening to lately, or if I just got a new book that I've been reading, I'll do that. I get a ton of suggestions. I mean, like an overwhelming amount of suggestions of like you should do this story and you should do this band, and I do try if I see a lot of people requesting something, I do try to do that. But for the most part, I just kind of go with what I feel like telling the story about.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Sometimes I give in like I thought that everybody in the world wanted to hear the story of 311 because I got so many comments. They're like 311, do the band 311.
Right.
And then I did that video and it was like not that successful a video. And I kind of thought, all right, this was a loud minority of people that wanted to hear this
Yeah,
this story.
unfortunately, sometimes social media amplifies the unimportant, doesn't it?
Exactly. So yeah, so it's kind of just like, I go by like what I know, or if it's somebody that I don't know, I'll kind of think like, oh, I wonder if they have an interesting story to tell, and I'll look into it. And then I'll just kind of look like, I'll start doing research and see like, all right, what's the thing that grabs me? Because my style is, I don't, like you said, it like the Paul Harvey thing. This is a story about 311. Because to me, then people are gonna, well, I don't care about 311, so I'm not gonna watch this video.
Yeah.
And like I said, like I loved like Behind the Music because that was all we had. And
Yeah,
I
that's
watched
right.
every single Behind the Music. So whether I knew the artist or cared, I watched the Leif Garrett Behind the Music 100 times, and I don't like Leif Garrett's music at all. But it's like that was all that was on. And now you have so many choices, and it's so easy to to swipe. So I try to find like, is there some kind of moral to this story that you could take away something, even if you don't care about this artist.
Yeah, and I think that's what's interesting. For those listeners who don't know who Paul Harvey is, please look him up. He was a great radio announcer, and he told these types of stories where you thought you knew what you knew until you exposed to what you didn't actually know about a particular individual, and he was really great doing that. What is interesting, of course, is that a lot of what you talk about, and particularly some of the older bands, and even maybe bands in the 80s and 90s, there is a common theme element that goes through, or theme that goes through all of them. And I think what has been interesting to me is, as a working with other artists, even through my label and people that I'm associated with in the business, it is about perseverance. It's about really sometimes making a right turn when you thought you were going to go left and discovering that, in fact, that was the right way to go. But most importantly, it was never stopping and never giving up on your dream and pursuing that to the greatest extent possible. That seems to be the common theme throughout all of the work that you've been presenting.
Yeah, definitely. The more the stories I do, the more, kind of these common themes come out. And yeah, it's like success coming out of failure. Like almost every artist I cover, they were in bands that failed before. They had albums that weren't hits, and yeah, it's just perseverance, luck, knowing the right people, which sometimes just came through a totally random occurrence, stuff like that. But yeah, definitely just keeping it going.
It's interesting. When I was talking to Gina, one of the things we discussed is sort of this whole idea of viral video and virality within TikTok, and how so many people want to sort of get that big hit, but they don't. And the music business has really gotten tougher because we now have 60,000 different postings every single day on Spotify. We have more music being produced and created than we've ever had before, I think. And so people wonder, how do they get found? And I think it is interesting because, unlike in the past when we actually had a lot of vinyl being sold, people had that experience, that physical a handling of a piece of product of a particular band or artist, and you don't have that today. And I think that sort of diminishes the opportunity, particularly for a lot of artists, to sort of have somebody playing their music regularly. Even though streaming is available all the time, I think America has become a swipe right culture, right?
Mm-hmm. No, for
And
sure. I mean, it's just such a different world than the one I grew up in, where everything is so splintered and there's so much music out there. And I mean, the same with like TV shows. You know, you just can't possibly keep up with all the TV shows. Every time I talk to friends, they're like, "Oh, have you, seen this show and this show and this show?" And I never even heard of some of these shows. But yeah, music is the same way. It's just so splintered now.
I think the good news, though, is that people can find those new artists and be able to sort of follow somebody that they really want to get to know. And I think that a lot of the subgenres, even within rock or within pop, create the opportunity, frankly, for a lot of artists to present themselves in a unique way. And I always tell people, as an artist, you need to find those 1,000 super fans. Those 1,000 super fans that'll spend $100 a year with you, right, for merchandise or ticketing or some of your music downloads or CDs or whatever. And you got $100,000 a year business, and you can actually make a living at doing this. But it's also about getting out and playing. That's another element that keeps coming through. Everybody that you talk about, they all get out. They kept playing. No matter what, they kept playing. Some of them got booed off stage. Some of them got thrown out. Some of them weren't successful at all. But at the end of the day, they had to build that fan base. And I think that's what a lot of people struggle with sometimes, because they realized, or don't realize, I should say, that this is also a performance art, right? You have to capture the audience. You have to capture the people that are in front of you so they become fans, and that you ultimately can respond to them and they can respond to you in a more evident fashion.
Yeah, that's so funny that you brought up the 1,000 true fans, because I talk about that all the time. I mean, even with like my own work on TikTok, like that, if you have like this loyal fan base, it may be small, but if they're buying everything that you do, you're still going to be able to be successful. So yeah, I think that we live in the culture now where maybe like nobody sells 10 million copies of an album anymore. But if you have a deeper connection with the fans that you do have, and now we're able to like follow our favorite artists on social media and get behind the scenes videos, and there's more information about our favorite artists than like they ever had before. So it's just different. So it's just a different world, but not necessarily better or worse, just a different thing.
Just different. Exactly. I think what else is interesting for me, and I do a lot of work overseas. I lived overseas for about 13 and a half years, and I've got some very good friends. In fact, we're looking at one of our artists to take over Europe, do a tour this summer. The European market's very different than the American market. We tend to be very very oriented towards that quick hit, right? We don't have a long attention span. The Europeans do. They love live music. They love the show. They love to participate. And I think for rock bands particularly, and some pop bands where there are live instrumentation, live players, people that perform, you find a real embrace in Europe that you don't find as well here. Sometimes we in America take a lot of these musicians, and I see it all the time down on Broadway here in Nashville, right? Which all the bands are playing up and down the street. It's almost like it's Muzak. People are there to drink and eat, right? And the performance is just there. It's to listen to in the background. Although people do go to see the bands, they do go to see some of the live music. But unfortunately, I think America's attention span, and what I call the time budget and the financial budget, right? People are, as you pointed out a moment ago, you've got 180 channels and nothing on, or you don't know this show, and it is tough to sort of focus down. But I have to say, I think what is beginning to happen, in my opinion, is that people, as I see here in this town, with more venues opening up, more live music being done, people in these venues understand that they have to do something different in order to attract people. That, serving up food isn't just enough anymore. Serving up a drink is not enough anymore. And so if you get live music, if you get some great performers in your shop, you get people to stay in their seats longer, buy more product from you. And oh, by the way, you create that following for you as a neighborhood venue or bar or whatever. And so I think I'm optimistic as it relates to where music is going, because we have a lot of great performers now. We have a lot more musicians that may not be obvious winners in sort of the PR campaign, but who are building a really good following within a particular geography or set of markets.
Right. I mean, that's the thing I've seen too, is I think, even with younger generations, like the passion for music is still there. Like that, I think is never going away. And there's still awesome bands out there and awesome music. It's just you have to go a different route to find it. There's no MTV really to show it. It's probably not going to be on the radio, but it's actually even easier to find it now. You just have to know where to look.
Well, that's right. And I think, you talk about radio because I always have people say, how do I get on the radio? Well, you don't anymore, first of all, because
Right.
radio's homogenized, right? I mean, you've got basically Cumulus and iHeart and, a couple of others, and they have their formulaic approach to radio. So the old independent radio stations aren't very evident anymore. And the big guys play the same top 40 or top 50 or whatever. And it's boring. I mean, it's really, really boring. The good news is you've got Sirius, so you can check out those 180 channels with nothing on, so to speak. And I think Sirius does a good job of sort of segmenting that. But I also believe that people can be more programmatic in terms of what they want to listen to. As you know, you can create your own playlists now and all those sorts of things. So there's a little bit of work and engagement by the fan, which is why, to our earlier point, bands and artists need to engage that fan base. As you said, some behind the scenes work, some chats, just as you do in your own live TikToks, right? Where you're talking to people, reading their comments and responding. People want to know that they're being paid attention to. One thing is, it was kind of interesting when just as a share, when I talked to Gino, he was talking about the idea. He said, how do we help break artists? It was a very interesting conversation we had. And he mentioned you, of course, and several others, and talked about the fact that as a group following, maybe sort of 400,000 or 500,000 followers today. And he said, wouldn't it be interesting if we could put something together where we could break an artist, not expecting anything. We have paid influencers. I don't know how well that works today. You can buy services where they'll put your music in front of an influencer and have that influencer, quote unquote, promote you, right? But it would be kind of interesting is guys like yourself and Gino and others who were to collaborate and help say, let's find a couple artists. Let's do a show where we break an artist, where not necessarily go viral, but basically we help them get that leg up and we talk to them. Maybe it would be kind of a cool idea, I thought. And I was wondering what your thoughts might be on something like that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I don't deal that much with modern music. Like my focus is more on the past, but in lives, people do ask me all the time, like, do you listen to modern bands? And like, yeah, I do still keep up with music, and I listen to like current artists. So, definitely in the future, that's something that I'm open to, is to turn people on to cool music. I think again, it's not necessarily my niche. There's other people out there that are really great, kind of playlist makers and taste makers. But I do listen to a lot of new music, and
yeah, I think the issue is you're right. We do marketing for playlisting and the like, and I was thinking, given the fact the idea really was saying how do you introduce some people maybe in their storytelling approach, right, with somebody new, right, very much like some of the bands of old. Again, it's just a thought he had. It was kind of a cool idea, I thought, because a lot of times very good artists who are not good storytellers, by the way. I work with a lot of artists, and it is amazing to me some of the very basic skills that they don't have, like interviewing, right? They don't know what to tell, what the story should be about, how do they get their points across, what's the key factors they want to share in a particular interview. So one of the things we do is and sort of help them to work through that, to get the who, what, when, where, how, and why, and figure out, more importantly, what they're trying to communicate. And I think people like yourself and Gino and others who are really good at storytelling can facilitate some of that maybe in the future. But in any case, it was an interesting idea.
No, for sure. I actually did this giveaway when I reached 300,000 followers. I did like a giveaway where I would just pick somebody at random, and they could pick a band that I would tell a story about, like their own band or a friend's band or something like that. And then so somebody won, and they're like, oh, I want to do it for my friend's band. And then I tried to contact them to interview them, but then they never got back to me. So they didn't know who I was. It was their friend who was trying to set it up. And so I think they were not interested, but I would like to do that in the future. Like, I think it would be cool to do, because a lot of what I do relies on you knowing who the band is. But I would love to do a band that you don't know, and just to kind of show that everybody has a great story. Even if they didn't go on to be a platinum selling band or something, like there's still interesting stories out there.
Yeah,
So that is
exactly.
something I want to do more of in the future.
Yeah, that would be very cool. I think that to your point, you've got a structure and put a new modern band into that structure, and of course you have to vet them and figure out what the great story is, because I think a lot of your stories you don't know who you're talking about until you get to the end. So it could be any
Right.
band. I mean, the reality is I've watched enough of you, and I go, I didn't know that. I had no clue who that was. And some of them are more obvious, but there's a lot of your stories that who the hell is he talking about? And then it's the aha moment, as I said at the end, which I quite enjoy. And then I go back and I get to look a little bit too and research the band and say, oh my goodness, that was how that happened. So very, very cool.
Right. I love it. Sometimes people tell me I watch your videos twice because I watch it and then after the reveal and I go back and watch it again, knowing who it is now.
Yeah, I got to tell you, I save those and I'm always going back to yours, and I go back even if I've seen it, I haven't seen it for a while. I'll go watch them again because they're entertaining. There's you tease out more information if you're watching it again because you say, oh, I didn't realize that, and then it's
Right.
it's kind of a fun process for an individual. Where are you going to take the channel? What's your views in the future, and are you thinking about any other endeavors around TikTok besides what you do right now?
Yeah, I mean the problem with TikTok is we have no idea what's going to happen with it. Is it
Right.
is it going to be banned, or is it just going to become passe? Are people going to move on to a different platform? So when I first started doing it and I first started like getting a lot of followers and attention on it, and when it became clear like, oh, this is a thing, like people are actually watching this. I thought about like, okay, what's the next move? Because am I going to be on TikTok when I'm 65? Probably not.
Right, right.
So yeah, I've been trying to think of like what's the next thing to pivot to. So I did start a podcast. A lot of people were asking for some longer form content. So
I saw that.
I did start a podcast about a month ago. I have 4 episodes so far. I'm doing that, and then I was working on a book. I mean, I've always wanted to be a writer. Obviously, my parents are writers, so it's always like been a dream of mine. And I've written a lot of stuff as just a hobby over the years. And I went to lunch with this guy who's a TikTok guy that I really like named Mark Mallman, and he is an author. And he was like, "Yeah, my publisher says if I get to 100,000 followers, like maybe we can get to," or my agent said, "If I get to 100,000 followers, I can maybe get to a bigger publisher." And I thought, "Oh, I have 100,000 followers. Maybe I should try to get an agent." So I put together a book proposal, and I got a literary agent. So we're working on trying to get that sold to a publisher. And it would just be, basically what I do on TikTok, music stories, but longer form.
Yeah.
And there's kind of a common theme that unites all the stories in the book. So I've been working on that. It's been a little bit of a slow process, but we're still very early in the process. So hopefully a book, hopefully, the podcast takes off. People all the time are like, you should have your own TV show. That's something that I would love to do. Just
Right.
waiting to be discovered by Netflix here.
That's right. You're right there in Chicago. Go stop by the Obamas at their new library. Maybe they can get you on Netflix, right?
I mean, whatever it takes. Yeah. Whatever
That's right.
context I have to use. So yeah, hopefully it goes on to something bigger, but if not, it's a lot of fun just doing it on TikTok, and the people that I've met and the impact that I seem to have on people. A lot of people tell me like, how much they appreciate my videos and my stories. So, even that by itself is really cool, but
Exactly. You're making a difference. I think that's fun. Exactly. Now, are you monetizing some of your work? How does TikTok work in terms of monetization?
So they do have this thing called the Creator Fund you can opt into, but it's not a ton of money. So like,
Sure.
the biggest video I ever had was a video that got 4.5 million views. And I think my payout from the Creator Fund for that was like $50, which is like cool. Like, some people have hobbies that cost them a ton of money. So if I'm making any amount of money, like, it seems like a win. But if that was a YouTube video with 4.5 million views that had ads on it, that would have been a lot more money. So the TikTok monetization is not great. I have done some like paid partnerships, but I'm also just kind of picky about who I do partnerships with. So I'll pretty much only do it if I can do it in my style. So I did do one with the estate of Irving Berlin, which was really cool. It was the 80th anniversary of White Christmas last year, and his record label reached out to me and said, "Would you be willing to do a video?" And I was like, "Yeah, first of all, I love White Christmas. Irving Berlin's story is amazing." And but the deal was I'm going to just tell it like I do every other video.
Right, right.
And they were okay with that. So I've done that, but not everybody wants that. Other people have wanted more control over what I do. But I wanted to the two that I've done. I've gotten a lot of comments where people are like, "I had no idea that this was even an ad, like that this was even a paid partnership." So that's what I want.
Right.
That's what I want it to be like. But even that, it's not like I can quit my job or anything. So
no, you got to have a day job. That's right, exactly. I mean, but
right.
I think most of the people, even myself here, I do these podcasts because I love the long form. I love to talk to different people. It comes back from the radio days and interviewing people. I'm not going to get rich doing the Iron Gate Records gig. I'm trying to help people, try to facilitate both their careers and the information content that's required for them to be successful and all of those sorts of things. That's why we actually even started a radio station so we could play their music all 24/7 and put podcasts on. And we do a show called Rising Star Radio for some of our younger guys that I'll do an interview and put that up for them and talk about what they're doing. They can share all of this on their social media. It all points back to the artist. And for me, that's a joy. It's my own son's a musician, and so at the end of the day here, it's really about helping people be successful, making it or trying to make it interesting, certainly make it fun, talk to people like yourself who do some very creative things, and then sharing that with the world, so to speak. And it's been a lot of fun so far. I got to say that people are working hard, artists are working hard. They have that dream. They think and want to make it, and so I'm here to help them a little bit along the way, and you're there to sort of tell them what went before and how they made it. So right. I think that's a great opportunity. So besides your family, obviously you're engaged in, are you still doing law, presumably?
I'm not a lawyer. I didn't go into practice. I just went into what's kind of called a JD preferred position, sure. Where it helps to have the JD, but I don't actually have to practice. Which I kind of realized when I was in law school, like, what, I don't actually want to work for a law firm. But yeah, so I just kind of work a corporate 9-to-5 job, but I just, was always still doing creative stuff. I've never been the kind of person where my work was my whole life. Right. I just always wanted to be doing something. So I've, written screenplays. I did improv at Second City. I just, always trying to do
very cool
different things. And then, so the TikTok was very much that kind of thing. It was just like, let's do another creative project. My wife actually challenged me to do a 30-day creative challenge. And we were both obsessed with TikTok. Like we would share videos with each other back and forth all the time. And I was like, maybe I'll make a TikTok channel. And she said, "What are you going to make a TikTok channel about?" And I said, "I don't know. Maybe I'll tell music stories." And she's like, "Nobody's going to watch that. Are you crazy?"
I love it.
Maybe by the 5th video, I think I got, maybe like 10,000 views. Not too crazy, but it seemed crazy to us. Like 10,000 people watched Patrick tell a story, and
yeah,
she was telling all her friends, and it's like thousands of people are watching Patrick, talk about Talking Heads. This is crazy, and now it's just like so beyond our wildest dreams. Like I never imagined I would have this many followers, or this kind of impact. So it's been a very weird journey.
TikTok has been criticized, obviously, in this country. I was reading a research study that looked at 1,000 students in America who were TikTokers versus China. China, of course, ByteDance owns the company. They have a very different approach to their equivalent of TikTok. But when they do the research in their side, they're showing them math scientists, astronomers, political stuff, God and country, although in this case, the CCCP and country. And so when they finally did this analysis between the U.S. TikTok followers and the Chinese, they asked them what the number one job they wanted to be. Well, in America, it's an influencer, and in China, it was a astronaut. So you know, I think the Chinese perhaps got a little right in that sense. But I think a lot of the things that I find, and I think the good thing that's happened, and I've noticed this when I was an early, watcher of TikToks, you would see all that crap. You'd see the girls dancing. You'd see all that stuff because it was not algorithmically presenting you with the things you want to know. Well, I love politics. That's sort of that's the game I enjoy watching most of all. And I enjoy music. And so the good news about the algorithm and TikTok is that I'm only getting those things now. I don't get the other ancillary garbage that I don't want to see. And so they've really done a pretty good job. And I like to tell people the good news about TikTok is you can go viral and you can be famous. The bad news is that the algorithm is pretty damn good. And as a result,
Right.
you're going to begin to know more and more about less and less, right? And the reason is they're going to very much segment the information and the content that you're going to see. So for me as a user, that's good because I don't have to watch all the other nonsense.
Right.
I get to watch some of the comedy shows. There's some, because stand-up is another one that I watch all the time, for a good laugh.
Yeah, no, same.
Right. And so I think that's the good news. And I think people have to understand that those algorithms, we call it feed the algorithm. You've got to feed the algorithm. So, you have to know who your audience is. You have to know where you're going and basically continually provide new content all the time. You can't do one TikTok a month and expect to generate the kind of results you're getting.
Yeah, no, when I first started, I posted every single day for I think maybe like 8 months. And then it just got to be too much and I pulled back a little bit. But yeah, definitely consistency is key. But yeah, I totally agree with you about I think TikTok has a bad rap among people that don't use it and think it's just dancing or it's just, that it's frivolous, that it's like mindless
Right.
swiping. And one of my favorite comments I ever got was I did a video on the White Stripes and somebody commented, like a little dialogue. It was like, my friends, oh, TikTok, that app for dancing, me has full 5-minute music documentaries on my feed. So like, I think there is like a lot of great stuff out there. Like
a lot of creative people. I think that's my wife always yells at me about watching TikTok because you're supporting the Chinese Communist Party. Honey, I'm not supporting the Chinese. I said at the end of the day, I'm supporting these people who are putting some really great content out there, who are showing great creativity, and I enjoy that. I'm sorry, I wish it was an American company, but the Americans weren't smart enough to do this. Okay, and so sorry about that. Just the way it is, and I think at the end of the day, I don't create anything on TikTok because I got a face for radio. But other than that, it's a good time.
Yeah, I mean, I have learned so much from TikTok. Like, even though I am a creator, technically, I still use it all the time for fun. And yeah, I just learned so much. And there's people doing analysis of film and TV and literature, and like you said, politics, and there's so much fascinating stuff. And you get to see people also that aren't represented in traditional media. So I follow,
Correct. That's right.
disabled creators and I saw this video a long time ago that like made such a huge impact on me. There was a Muslim creator who was saying like, we can be the face that people think of when they think of Muslims. Like you don't have to think of like what we see in movies and TV, these negative representations. Like you can see me on my TikTok, like talking to you and see my life.
Right.
And so it just, gives you access into people who, you wouldn't get to see how they live or, their thoughts and ideas otherwise. And, so I love that about TikTok. So I don't think about the fact that it's Chinese, but it's
no, that's right. It's right. My wife's an
there's so
occupational
much
therapist, and you're right. And and she's always been working with people with disabilities, et cetera. And there's a few people. She's actually an expert in cerebral palsy and also in autism. She also does a lot of work with stroke victims, and so it's fascinating because I sometimes see that stuff when I see somebody coming on. There's some very decent creators there who are CP disabled. They talk about what their life is like. Some people who are amputees and how they adjusted, and so as a result, it is interesting to hear their life story, how they came back from adversity, and it is inspiring, frankly. For one, they're putting themselves out there. Sometimes they get nasty comments, which is unfortunate and stupid, but most of the time people are very supportive, and I think it's a great vehicle to tell a diverse set of stories across people who have very different views and different capabilities. So I think you're absolutely right on there.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I will say I think that the community on TikTok for the most part is pretty positive. Like, I mean, I think no matter what you post, you're gonna get negative comments. I get them, too. But for the most part, I think it's, compared to like YouTube comments or Reddit or something, I think for the most part, TikTok is usually pretty positive, pretty uplifting. So
Indeed.
There's some advantages.
Well, Patrick, first of all, I want to thank you for all of your time, and you've been generous to a fault. I want to tell you to keep up the good work on TikTok. I know it may not pay much, but at the end of the day, we're enjoying the hell out of it, and I certainly do, and that's why I wanted to have you on the show, and certainly be happy to do a podcast with you and return the favor when it's appropriate. But thank you so very much.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mark.
All right, Patrick. I'll talk to you soon. Thanks again.
Thanks for joining us this week on The Independent Musician. Make sure to visit our website, IronGateRecordsRadio.com, where you can subscribe to the show on your favorite streaming platform, so you'll never miss an episode. While you're at it, if you found value in this podcast, we'd appreciate you giving us feedback or simply tell a friend about the show. Be sure to tune in next week for a new episode of The Independent Musician, where the independent musician is the star.